Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the program on this very busy Wednesday, February 5th. A lot going on. It's been a very busy couple of weeks. This time of year can get very slow. Hasn't been the case, though, as there seems to be something happening every day, some kind of news, some kind of story, some kind of headline, and there's been a lot of them as we head towards what is really the slow time of year where spring training will get underway, and then you're counting the days to the NCAA tournament to kind of get you out of the doldrums. But the Super Bowl is still in everybody's mind. They had the parade today in Kansas City as the Chiefs got a chance to, be lauded by their fans who waited a very, very long time for a championship, 50 years, as a matter of fact, for a championship. So now, and it's funny, now you hear about Andy Reid's masterpiece. I laugh. Masterpiece. Andy Reid called the same gate 1,000 times, but now it's a masterpiece. Why? Because it worked. Because he came from behind. Because the plays were made. The ball went the right way. The ball bounced the right way. The plays got made. Garoppolo made some bad plays, and now it's a masterpiece. That's fine. That is sports in essence. When it doesn't work, it's a disaster. When it works, it's a masterpiece. And it's the way it goes. I mean, sometimes the difference between winning and losing is infinitesimal. It's the bounce of a ball or a split-second decision, and it decides winners and losers. And in no game is there winning and losing more disparate than it is in the Super Bowl, where winning is everything and losing is painful and costly. And that's what Garoppolo and Shanahan will deal with. As I've stated many times through the years, it is far worse to lose in the Super Bowl than it is to lose along the way in the playoffs. If you lose along the way in the playoffs, hey, you made the playoffs, you had a good season. When you lose in the Super Bowl, it sticks to your ribs. But there's a lot going on in all kinds of news and sports. You have the Betts deal, the three-team deal that was Betts to the Dodgers. Now, the Dodgers have to go through the whole year of signing him. They didn't bring him out there not to sign him. And it makes the Dodgers they didn't give up a lot. They obviously took back the Price contract. Didn't give him a lot, though. Give up a lot. And they're more athletic. They're better defensively, and they're better balanced because then they have a right-handed hitter. Betts is a great player. Comes in right behind Trout as an all-around player. So he will help them, and the Dodgers have a big edge in the National League, just like the Yankees have a big edge in the American League, bigger now because the Red Sox are obviously weaker. And are in very much the throes of a rebuilding process right now. A couple things you could have predicted. One would be that you would hear from the Rose camp and the knuckleheads who will get in behind this. Oh, if there's going to be all this going on with the Astros, what Rose did is not nearly as bad. Reinstate Rose. Rose and everything that happens anywhere in baseball, whether it happens with steroids, whether it happens with sign stealing, not any of it has anything to do with the Pete Rose case. Pete Rose is not eligible for the Hall of Fame because he put himself on the suspended list. Nobody put him there. He made a deal to put himself there, and he can't get himself off the list. That's what everybody who opines on this, and knuckleheads who know nothing about what happened because it's so long ago now, realize that nobody put Rose on that list except Rose. He agreed to be put on that list so that baseball would not basically stand up, pound the table, and say Rose bet on baseball. He did not want that. So they made a deal, and each side broke the deal before the ink was dry. So you had Rose lying, and you had Giamatti and Vincent telling everybody that they within earshot, including John Dowd, telling everybody within earshot that Rose had bet on baseball, and they had evidence that he bet on baseball. So this is Pete Rose's creation. Then Pete Rose is the one who thumbed his nose at the Hall of Fame. And I like Pete Rose. You've seen him on this show. But Pete Rose caused this. Pete Rose is the one who thumbed his nose at the Hall of Fame and went down the block and signed autographs. Pete Rose is the one who went in front of the Hall of Famers and lied to them. Pete Rose is the one who was adamant about his lies until he finally needed the money and put the truth in a book 12 years later and then said, you know what? I really did bet on baseball. Duh. Like we didn't know you bet on baseball the whole time. Anyone who read the Dowd report knew you bet on baseball at the time. But the idea that it's not worse in baseball's world is much worse. Much worse for a man in a position of power to bet on the sport, that he controls the lineup and controls who plays and doesn't play. It's much worse. And when you walk in there, when you walk into a baseball locker room, doesn't say anything about steroids, doesn't say anything about sign stealing. It says a lot about gambling right on the wall. It says a lot about betting and about gambling right on the wall. Now, we are into a different world of betting and a different world of gambling these days, but not for the players. Yes, there's going to be a lot of money made, and the franchises will be even more valuable because of what is going to happen with legalized gambling in this country. All true. We're just in the beginning of that. We're in the top of the first of what will be a very long game in that regard. But that has nothing to do with the players and the managers betting on the sport. They know that it's automatic expulsion, and the ramifications are dire. And on top of it, the Hall of Fame and baseball have no relationship except this, that the Hall of Fame only accepts people for entry who are not on the suspended list. Rose placed himself on the suspended list as part of his agreement, and he can't get off. And he needs the commissioner to get him off. And I think if he had lived a different life, he would have got off. If he hadn't lied, he would have got off. And now he's created his own bed, and I don't know when he'll get off, if ever. And we all know he still gambles. I mean, if you've met Pete Rose for 10 minutes, you know he still gambles. So every time something happens in baseball, someone brings up, oh, this is worse than, this is so much worse than Pete Rose. It's time for Pete Rose to get. You know what? It was long ago time for Pete Rose to get into the Hall of Fame. And I think if Pete Rose really wants to get into the Hall of Fame, and I told Pete this himself when he was in my studio, if you really want to get in the Hall of Fame, what you do is you go meet with the commissioner and you tell him, I will sign an affidavit that I will never, ever seek employment from any major league team. I just want to get in the Hall of Fame. I will never hold a position of any authority with a minor league team or a major league team. I will never wear a baseball uniform again, as in terms of employment. I promise you that. I'll sign an affidavit to that. And I think if that happened, they would reinstate him. I think that's their grand fear, is that somebody would hire him because he's still popular with the fans, and they don't want that. They don't want him around the active game. They've never wanted him around the active game. And then he ticked a lot of people off with the lies. So I think that was the bigger problem. But the idea that this always crops up is just ridiculous. It has nothing to do with anything. The Yankees today, as you probably heard, lost Paxton. Now, what a shock. If you know anything about Paxton, you're not surprised he's injured. The guy's always injured. If you go back and look over his whole career, he's been injured his whole life. He's been injured 7 or 8 different times. So guys who are like him and are always hurt are always hurt. That's all there is to it. So him being hurt's not a surprise. He's always hurt. I mean, it's like the 8th different injury he's had since 2014. The guy's always hurt. So it shouldn't come as any surprise. And you never, ever, I don't care what the circumstances, you never have too much pitching. You'll never not exhaust your pitching in terms of starting pitching through the season. If you have 7 guys, if you have 8 guys, I don't care. You will never have too many guys. And the Yankees kept Tap around for just that reason. And obviously, with Tanaka and Severino, and I don't know what's up with Herman. We still don't know whether you'll see him or not this year or at what point or whatever, who knows. But you have Cole and you have Severino and you have Tanaka, you have Happ till Paxton comes back, and that's still plenty of pitching. So they are, they're fine. I mean, they're fine. I'm not worried about them. You knew they're going to have some injuries along the way. It's just the way baseball is now. That's going to be the case. Plus, the competition is not going to be as powerful as it's been because the Red Sox are down. The Yanks are going to have a big edge in their league, and because no one knows exactly how this is going to play for Houston, which has still got a good team. And obviously, the Dodgers now with Betts and Price, I think, are clearly the team in the National League. Probably were anyway. I keep seeing all these different stories about the Yankees having to, get past the anger of the Astros and everything. And I shake my head when I see it. Listen, you can't tell me you would have won. CC Sabathia can tell me how they would have won the championship. He doesn't know that. You have no way of knowing that. You have no way of knowing how big a role it played in their games, and you have no way of knowing what would have happened if you had gotten to the World Series. So the idea that you would have won a championship and now you're champions, I mean, give me a break. How ridiculous is that? Plus, Yankees have very short memories. We're here now all the time that the Yankees suspected things in 17. If they suspected things in 17, why'd they hire Beltran if the 17 was over? Number one. Number two, what about all the steroid guys the Yankees used to win championships? We don't count any of that? That's not cheating? Or we just dust that under the rug and we don't care about that? Do you want to give back the title games that they won with guys who were clear steroid users? Do we want to give back any contributions those guys had in any of those games? I don't think so. So it's very convenient when you forget about your past problems, but it's always about, oh, what about this? And this cost us a championship. We have to get, for the good of the game, we got to get past. What about what you did? And I guarantee you there were other teams out there, or these are the worst rumors of all time, that there were other teams out there also stealing signs. Because there have been a lot of rumors that there are more teams. Now, I don't know which teams they are, nor do I really care, but I guarantee you they weren't the only team. Maybe they had the most elaborate scheme, but they weren't the only team trying to steal signs. And baseball, again, did a bad job because they allowed this technology into their video rooms, into their clubhouses, and onto their bench. That was their mistake. But I'm sorry. No one's going to feel sorry. At least I'm not going to, A, give the Yankees one win on any of these games or think that they would have won championships. Nonsense. And I want to ask them about what their thought process is. And this is for Hal, and this is for any Yankee, and this is for CC, and for anybody else. What about these guys who were known steroid users who played on all your teams and contributed? They don't count? They didn't cheat? Or we don't count, we don't care about that because it's the Yankees. So it's a very fine line you walk when you decide that we're honest and they're not. Very, very fine line. So I'm sorry, I have no sympathy, and I don't crown anybody a champion unless they win it on the field. Win it on the field. Don't whine. Especially when you win as many championships with the Yankees, it really, to me, looks weak if you're a Yankee and you're begging for championships you didn't win. I mean, come on now. You're a Yankee. Act like one. Don't beg for championships you didn't win, please. Okay? There's something about being a Yankee and begging for championships you didn't win. I mean, come on now. Do you need it that badly? Act like a Yankee. I mean, that's just as nauseating. A couple of things in the NFL. The passing, and this is a guy that most fans don't, nowadays who are younger, don't know anything about, but I watched I didn't root for these Packer teams when they were young, when I was young, and they were great. And I actually have to admit, I rooted for the Cowboys in those games when the Cowboys were kind of the upstarts and they were playing the Packers. And they had those classic games. I kind of rooted for the Cowboys because everybody else was rooting for the Packers. I didn't have any reason, but, I rooted for him. I rooted for Roger when he was there because I loved Roger in college. And I have to admit that even though, for the most part, I grew up a Giant fan, I rooted for Roger when he played in the league because I loved Roger when he was at Navy. He was one of my first football heroes. And I remember following him when he was off doing his 5 years, and that Landry was sending him the playbooks, and he was off, blah, 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 and then he came back and everything else. So I always loved him. He was always one of my favorites. So when he played in those games, I always rooted for him. I didn't like Craig Morton, but I rooted for Roger. But before that, you had those great Packer teams and those great Cowboy games, and then, of course, the Super Bowls and everything else, but the Lombardi years. And, everybody had great fear and great respect for the Packers because all they did was win. But Willie Wood passed away at the age of 83. And Willie Wood was someone who was really, on a team full of Hall of Famers, was one of these special guys. You know, a guy who was a quarterback in college who couldn't be a quarterback in the pros because you weren't able to be a quarterback in the pros when you were 5'10", you were a black guy. So he's a guy who wrote, as everyone knows, Lombardi a note saying, "Can I have a chance?" Lombardi's the only guy who gave him a chance, and he wound up being a guy who was a 9-time All-Pro, playing safety for the Packers, part of that great team with Adderley and Henry Jordan and Willie Davis and Nitschke and all those great Packers. But he went on to be a coach. He went on in some circles to break ground as a coach. So Willie Wood, little, 5'10", tough guy, ball hawk, made the biggest play against Kansas City in that Super Bowl. Always around a football. You thought of those great players on those teams. Nitschke with his toughness, obviously Herb Adderley, and Willie Wood. And obviously all the guys on the offense too, but I mean on the defensive side too. So passed away, legendary figure. Had some dementia issues. Another guy that it took its toll. Wound up living in an assisted living place, but had dementia. Again, a storied career that needs to be mentioned because, when guys like Willie Wood leave, if you're an NFL fan, if you like the NFL, you got to mention the guys who helped build the NFL. Willie Wood's one of those guys who helped build the NFL. There's a lot of guys from that era in the 60s that helped grow that league when that league kind of really came to age. I know people think it came to age with the giant Colt overtime game, which is true. That were the two most important games were that game and, of course, the Jets Super Bowl upset of the Colts. But there was a lot of football played in between those games by a lot of great players. There was such a great number of great players from that whole era. And many of them, obviously, Packers. The other thing is, did you notice that the Jaguars, whose owner has always wanted to take the franchise to London, they don't do well in Jacksonville, number one. It's not an NFL city. And number two, the owner really wants to be in London. Next year, they're going to play back-to-back games, if you noticed, in London, which is a precursor to the first team from London, which will be the Jacksonville Jaguars. They won't be the Jacksonville Jaguars anymore. They'll be the London whatevers. But they are on their way, maybe in 2 years or 3 years, to play half their games in London. Right now, they're going to play back-to-back games for the first time ever in London, which gets them into the mode of, hey, the difference would be that there'd be a point where sometime they might spend 3 weeks in a row in London, but that would be it. Back-to-back games in London is the beginning of somebody going there. And the NFL wants to get to a point where they're playing an international game every week of the season. That's part of their quest in their new world order. But this is a very telling sign with them playing back-to-back games in London this year. We are moving in on the NBA trade deadline. So, I mean, I know we're jumping from sport to sport here, but there's a lot going on right now. There's a lot of stuff. So, obviously, we got that as all these different things with what's going to go on with the Knicks, what's going to go on with these trades. There's all kinds of trade rumors here, trade rumors there. Trade was completed last night. There'll be more in the next couple of days. And you just want to see if some of these top teams add anything that really makes a difference. Do the Lakers add somebody? What happens with Iguodala, stuff like that, as we're waiting to see as this goes forward here. So obviously the Knicks should be active. We'll see if the Nets are too. So we head towards the trade deadline tomorrow in the NBA with all that's going on there. So interesting time. As we said, it hasn't been quiet by any stretch of the imagination. There's a lot going on. And again, Met stuff, Knicks stuff. Yankees now have the Paxton injury to keep their fans on their toes. The Red Sox make the big trade. Parade today down in Kansas. Looked like a good crowd. I mean, looked like a very good crowd today. I'm sure everybody got to take the day off and, jump into Kansas City and have himself a party today. I didn't hear, I guess, Andy Reid. I haven't seen any here. Maybe we'll turn some sound around on this. I guess Andy guarantee? Was it a real guarantee that he? We'll have to listen to it and see if it's a real guarantee. You don't want to pin that to your back. Those aren't easy. Yeah, it'd be hard enough. A lot of people, because of the quarterback, think that this is going to be, they're coming back next year. We touched on that yesterday. That is so hard to do. It's ridiculous. And it doesn't happen. Just look. Once in the last 21 years have you had back-to-back winners. Once. Pats did it once. Not easy to do. Everything is set up against it. Your free agents are harder to sign. People want money. Guys aren't as hungry. I mean, you're the hunted in every game you play. It's just very, very difficult to do. In a big way, very difficult to do. And I'm telling you, I saw the reaction of the Niners who already watched the game. And a couple of the linemen made the exact point that I made to you on Monday. How they were within a fraction of bringing Mahomes down on so many different plays where they had an arm or he got out of the grasp or he just was a step ahead. He got sacked 4 times. A normal quarterback would have been sacked without his incredible escapability, would have been sacked 9 or 10 times in that game. And they were talking about on the 3rd and 15 play how they had him. I mean, they had him and how they even thought they had him. And he got out and lofted that ball that Hill obviously took down for the big gainer that changed the game. Because at that point on 4th and 15, there's still 6 and change left in the game. Andy's got a punt on 4th and 15. And then hope with the 3 timeouts left that he can at least get 1 score up and at no worse get a chance to onside kick. That'd be the worst. Maybe get the ball back before that and get a little break. But 4th and 15 is just not a play you're going to take with that much time left in the game because it's such a low percentage play. I can't think they would have gone there on 4th and 15. But it didn't come up because that turned out to be the game play that obviously launched the comeback. You're 10 points up. You got them 3rd and 15. They've just been demoralized by a reversal and a good one because Hill didn't catch the ball. It was a bad throw. Mahomes bounced it. Hill tried to catch it. Didn't. And here you are, 3rd and 15, and they almost have him. Almost. And there were so many times that those linemen almost had him dead to right. And he'd get out and run or get out and get a throw off. And that, to me, was without question the biggest difference in that game. He didn't have a great game up until those last couple of drives. And really to the last drive, he was classic. But he didn't have a great game throwing the ball. But he had a great game in terms of his ability to keep his wits and to get out of the pocket, whether it's to run or to pass, and get out of there and move and get away from the initial burst. They collapsed the pocket. They caused all kinds of trouble. They got in there and pressured like crazy. And I'm telling you, if they faced a lesser immobile quarterback, they could have had 8 or 9 sacks, maybe 10. That's not being unrealistic. That's how much pressure they put on. He did a remarkable job. And again, people are overreacting to him already, but that's what happens at the Super Bowl. People overreact to your winning, which is part of the fun part. and people overreact to your losing. So now Garoppolo, what about his future? Can he overcome this? He's got it now. He has to do it. Blah, blah, blah. Hey, he's a young quarterback who now has been to the game. And yes, he had a tough fourth quarter. Yes, he did. He had a tough game. He had a tough fourth quarter. There were a couple of throws. The throw where they ran the deep post to Sanders, he made a good judgment there. He just missed with the throw. The biggest play was, as I've told you since the game, was that third down play where he has Kittle wide open, absolutely wide open, and a play they've probably run 9,000 times this year. That's the one. That's the one that's going to haunt them. So the Chiefs, and give the Chiefs credit, the Chiefs are a classy organization. First of all, Andy's a very likable guy. Mahomes is a very likable guy. Mahomes is a wonderful talent. And the Chiefs have always done it. They've been a very good, solid franchise. They've always been an NFL first franchise. They do things in a classy manner. They've always been immensely wealthy. The Hunts have been wealthy for generations. Lamar Hunt, Nelson Bunker Hunt. These guys were incredibly wealthy men. This generation, they might not be as wealthy as their dads, but they're still very, very wealthy people. And this franchise, handed down from father to son, now being run by the next generation of the Hunts, but they're classy people. And they look at things in the right way, and they do things for the league right way, and they're not boastful, they're not arrogant, they don't act that way. They're just people who were good sportsmen. Lamar Hunt was a good sportsman. He liked sport. And his brother wanted to corner the silver market at one point and was a big oil man, and Lamar cared about sport. Lamar cared about tennis. He cared about football. He's the guy who named the Super Bowl. He was a sportsman. And that's why his name adorns the AFC trophy. And this was clearly the biggest span between Super Bowl wins of all time, from 4 to 54. Yes, Jet fans, you can eclipse that next year if you want to. From 3 to 55, if you would like to. So the old AFC, the old AFL got one. So the guys who went there with the offense of the 70s, with Henry Stram and the offense of the 70s, went there and destroyed the Minnesota Vikings. If you remember that classic NFL video, that NFL Films video, where Steve Sable, who just got into the Hall of Fame, and God rest his soul, mic'd Hank Stram. And Hank knew he was mic'd, and everything he's doing is working. And he is chortling, as Hank liked to do. If you knew Hank, Hank was a very, very confident guy. And he believed that he was the man on offense. Matter of fact, Lombardi went to pick Hank Stram's brain as a young coach because Hank was considered such an offensive guru at the time. And Hank's there, and now everything's working, so he starts playing to the microphone. And he starts saying, look at Kasulki, meaning Carl Kasulki from the Vikings. Look at him running around out there. Look at him, everything was working. And they had the Vikings running in the wrong directions. And he was loving it, absolutely loving it. And now the Chiefs, who, that offense of the 70s lasted all of 1 year with the little backs. Now it took him 50 years to get back. And now it's with a different offensive guru in Andy Reid, who now has gone from being a guy who couldn't win the big one to the guy who carved the masterpiece, as it is now being said, which shows you just how outrageous it is. You go from being a guy who can't win the big one to now you carved the masterpiece. So I hope Andy enjoys it. Back after this. I'm going to do and I didn't for Iowa because I don't particularly like the Iowa caucus setup. I think it's ridiculous, and it was an embarrassment this year. They should have changed it years ago. First of all, I don't think it should be the first primary. it's not really the primary. It's not really a primary, but the way they set up the caucus system. But they were going to change it this year, and we all know that if you've watched the last couple of days, it's been a complete embarrassment that they haven't been able to get the votes counted. And they still haven't gotten all the votes counted. So to have everybody pour as much attention as we get ready to look to see who the Democratic candidate will be for president against President Trump, to put as much time and effort as everybody does into Iowa, and as many media people who have to spend time there, and the amount of people who have to go back and forth there, and the amount of money that is spent there to see what has happened has been just a complete embarrassment. It really has been, to watch this circus. And that should be the end of the caucus system as we know it. I mean, without any question. But here's the thing. You know, I've always thought, it's funny. I've been fascinated by presidential politics for a very long time. And like I said, that's why I wanted to do some stuff with it as we go through this year of the campaign. And also, I wanted to do something where I go down the middle, because you can't watch anything anymore. Because on one, if you watch Fox, everything is so pro, Republican and pro-right. And if you watch MSNBC, everything is so pro-Democrat and so pro-left and anti-Trump, and the other thing, and Fox is so pro-Trump, that really it's embarrassing because, life isn't that way. I mean, the bottom line is the president's going to have good days, going to have bad days. And the candidates who are trying to battle each other for the Democratic nomination are going to have good days and bad days. But that's not the case. I mean, and I understand that we have never seen, and in our lifetime, we have never, ever, and I've been a media person for 40 years now, and I've been a person who grew up in network television, so I understand it. I understand how network news works. I understand the whole process. I understand what motivates the shows and everything else. Obviously, everything is based on one thing. Their inability to get ratings. They are going to go to whatever will get them ratings. We know that. That's the game. And we have never in our lives, not any time since I have watched television, have we ever seen coverage centering on one person like we have seen the last 3.5 years in my life. There is not a day that goes by that the central theme of any of these shows is not Trump, whether it's pro or whether it's anti, and especially with the anti. It's incredible. I have never, it's never varies. He has been the topic of conversation on every one of these shows. It's always how it impacts him, how are you going to run against him, how it is. But the fascinating thing is we have not seen anything like this before. And I don't know if it continues with another person. Either the coverage has changed and now this is going to be the norm. I don't think so. I think this is because it's one person who has so much gotten under the collective skin of America, whether it's you're pro him, and I don't think he's lost very many of his supporters, or negative, and I don't think he's gained any who he didn't have. So I think everybody's as polarized. And what we watched last night, I mean, who thought in our lifetime, and I like watching speeches, who thought in our lifetime we would ever, and I had to tape it last night because I was out, so I had to tape the State of the Union. So I didn't get to come home and watch it until like 11 o'clock last night. So I turned it on from the beginning, right from where he's going to enter the chamber, and watch, from when they give you the President of the United States, and the people who've been standing there for hours, they could get on TV, are there, and the president comes in and he shakes hands, and it's all set up, so it's the guys who are his well-wishers, they shake hands, the whole thing. They stand there all day so they can get on TV. You know how it is, right? And then he goes to the lectern, and he turns, and he shakes hands with the vice president, and then he shakes hands with the speaker, and then they announce him again, and then we go through it again, and then finally we get to the speech. Well, last night you had a couple of wrinkles that we had never seen before, ever. In the history of our country, never. There is a standing salutation, a standing greeting that the speaker has for the president. It is my high honor, okay, and great distinction to give you the. But last night, we know there is great rancor between Pelosi and Trump, obviously, which ended today with the acquittal in the Senate, which was a lock. It was a stone cold lock from the beginning. The numbers were there. I tweeted 10 days ago. They were never going to have witnesses. No one was going to change. We all knew that this was set up from the beginning. There was nothing that was. It was a given before it ever happened. Mitch McConnell had the thing set up from day one, which everybody knew. But the point is, you have the speaker who last night just announces the President of the United States. No high honor, no nothing. And then she goes to shake his hand, and he won't shake her hand. So here now on national television, the Speaker of the House, in a gesture that goes back generations, goes to shake hands, and he won't shake her hand. So we had that. She delivered the first blow, and she did not give you the classic greeting. Just, here's the president. And then he returns the favor by not shaking her hand. And then she, of course, in what has now become a famous piece of video, which will last forever, she rips up the speech right in front of him. So imagine, they're going to be talking about this. They're going to be talking about that and most of these speeches are laundry lists and they're terribly boring. And now they're staging fronts from, and they do some, this started about, I think I might be wrong, but I think I'm right, that I think the first one that started staging these events was Reagan. I'm pretty sure he was the first, where he'd have people that he'd address in the audience that they'd bring in, whether it was the fireman who saved a kid from a burning building, or it was an army man who did something special, or a teacher that had done this, or somebody who. So you have these stories, okay, and he had some good ones last night. You had the Tuskegee Airman who was 100 years old. You had he with his great grandson. You had the serviceman brought over in front of his wife. You even had, whether you like Rush Limbaugh or don't, and whether your politics line up with Rush Limbaugh or not is not the issue here, okay? I know Rush Limbaugh to casually say hello to. We know each other. We're not friendly. I mean, I know him. If we were in the same room, we would chat and have a friendly conversation. I've chatted with him 5 or 6 times in my life. I mean, I know him a little bit. I've actually been in his company a couple times. I think he's good on the air. I don't always agree with him. But as we just found out, he's very sick. So that whole thing last night, which he knew, which he played up theatrically, he had been told in the afternoon that he was getting it. But, I mean, whether you like the gesture or not, here's a guy who has got stage 4 lung cancer. Okay? I mean, he's very sick. So that was obviously a nice moment for him last night. I mean, to get that kind of award, that is a very, very award of great distinction. So you had that last night, and you always have those now. And like I said, he had some good ones last night. But they're going to be analyzing that and talking about that for the next 50 years. You got the speaker who disses the president. The president disses the speaker. The speaker comes back and disses the president again. All on, TV for the ages, to the world. I mean, have you ever, there used to be a formality. There used to be a protocol and a formality to that speech. And yes, it's always been that if you went with something that was on the agenda that the other side didn't like, they'd sit on their hands, and you would all rise up for the patriotic parts. Only your party would rise up for the parts you liked. You want to cut taxes, they don't, so they rise up for cut taxes. But when it was about the country, they'd all rise up. Well, last night, I mean, the Democrats weren't moving no matter what, unless it was something where it had to do with a nice story like the little baby that was, born 1 pound and is now there as a robust kid, or, the Tuskegee M was 100 years old. I mean, that kind of stuff got everybody out of their seats. I mean, that was nice stuff. Or the guy coming home and, surprising his wife last night at the event. Now, she had to wonder what she was doing there last night, so I don't know how big a surprise it really was, but who knows? I mean, it was theatrical, okay? And they're all good at being theatrical now. Barack Obama was great at being theatrical. Ronald Reagan was great at being theatrical. Clinton was great at being theatrical. Bush is good at being, Trump is good at being theatrical. So we know that. For the most part, the rest of the speech is like a laundry list. It's boring as heck. But that stuff you had last night with Nancy ripping up the speech right in front of him. I mean, whoa, that's crazy stuff. That stuff's going to go, that's going to be remembered. That's going to be in history books. What you saw last night's going to be in history books. They're going to be teaching that in the 5th grade, 20 years from now. The day that the speaker, and they'll have obviously 20 years of history to talk about who was right and who was wrong and who did a good job and who, just like Mitt Romney today. What Mitt Romney did today is going to be talked about years from now. And it's either he's going to be the one Republican who stood up and did what was right while the others didn't, and he had a conscience, or he just hated Trump and he was wrong and the other guys were right. History will be a very good judge of that. It's much easier in that time than it is in our time, where it's going to be debated along partisan lines, where if you're pro-Trump, you believe this, and if it's anti-Trump, you believe that. I mean, that's just the way it is. Now, we can all disagree on all these different things, which we all know. That's what makes politics. But there was some stuff last night that you're going to see forever that you just don't see, because there's a protocol to all of this, and we went against all our protocols, all our ceremony. But right now, as we head to New Hampshire, which is a much better, and really, let's be honest, the race doesn't really begin to Super Tuesday. You got to get yourself to Super Tuesday. If you get yourself to Super Tuesday, then you find out, then that's when the rubber hits the road. That's it. You find out where you are. Okay? I mean, that's when you got to have a lot of money. You got to be in a lot of states. You got to have people on the ground. You got to have money in every market, and you're either in or you're out. That's it. Because you can't fund. You're not now funding Iowa or funding New Hampshire. You're out of money, and you're out of college. You're out of money. That's it. So that's it. Right now, you can see they're whittling down. But the amazing thing about this story, and I didn't expect it, is Biden's almost out of gas, and he's almost out of gas both in terms of money, and he's almost out of gas in terms of energy. He doesn't seem to have any life left. And I thought he would be there all the way in this. And he looks like he's fallen by the wayside. I watched him give it, they all came out at 11 o'clock the other night because there was no results. And his speech was so bad, it was like, all he kept saying was, folks. I'm like, so they were on today and they were making a great point. Hey, Joe's got to pick it up. These other guys are as old as he is, and he's walking around like he's 120. Bernie's like a young man with a bounce in his step. Trump is like a young man with his bounce in his step. Bloomberg's waiting in the wings, and he's got a bounce in his step. What's up with Biden? He looks like he wants to go, hit the beach, sit in the lounge chair. And he is really, he is on life support here, trying just to get to South Carolina and get to where a voting block works for him, and get some life, and get some money, and get some energy. So this thing has taken a very big spin. It really has. And I did not think that this was going to work at all for Bloomberg, despite his incredible wealth, which we know is overwhelming, and the fact that he has this outrageously developed data system and ground system that he has put together that he's ready to unleash on Super Tuesday and have them carry right through the fall, where he's put together the state-of-the-art people. He's paid people outrageous amounts of money to work for him. He's guaranteed them jobs all the way to November. He's paying, and I know this because a couple of people I know who had kids who went to work for them, guaranteed people's salaries you would not believe. Usually you go there and you get paid nothing for these jobs. Paying real money to these people because he's one of the richest men in the world. I mean, the man's got $50 billion. He can go as deep into his pockets as he wants. This whole campaign won't cost him $1 billion, and he's got 50 of them. But he has now seen an opening, and we know he's not a great orator, but he's a very good thinker, and he's a very good organizational person. And now he's got an opening. So it's going to be very interesting to see if he can thrust himself into this race. Now, we know he's not a real Democrat, but he's not a real Republican either. That was his big problem. He really didn't have a party. He kind of he tried to find a place where he could fit because his views, let's be honest, he's got some views that are 1 foot on this side and some views that are 1 foot on that side. And that makes it difficult. Plus, he's not in a time where you need to be photogenic, at a time when you need to have a bigger-than-life personality. You need to be good in front of the camera. Reagan was good in front of the camera. It was great in front of the camera. He was an actor. He was a voiceover guy. He was an actor. Clinton, you could feel his empathy. He was very good in front of the camera. He was very good on camera. Obama was a master orator. And even George Bush was someone who was extreme. He came off like a cowboy. He was very likable, guy you'd like to have a beer with. I mean, but he came across well on TV. So all these recent guys have all had one thing in common. And Trump, too. Trump was a basically reality TV star. Without that show, and I used to watch that show because it was on NBC before I'd go do Mic'd Up on NBC, which would be on after the 11 o'clock news. At 10 o'clock was Trump's show. So we used to sit there and watch at least the last half hour of his show because we're getting ready. We had to be in our green room and we'd be getting ready for what we were doing. Plus, we had to be in position once the news started because they'd throw right from the news to us without a break. And I would start my show right at 11:30, so I'd have to go down there and get ready and be cognizant of what was going on with the news and everything. So we'd always watch the boardroom scene at least. And got used to seeing him in that. And America got used to seeing him in that. So that's why he had marketed himself. And he is a brilliant guy at marketing himself and his brand. Let's be honest, that's what he is. He's a brand. He doesn't own all those things he's got his name on. He puts his name on them. And he's been brilliant doing it. He's very smart. And obviously, look what he's done with his brand for himself. But also someone who handles TV very well. Well, Bloomberg doesn't. That's not a strength of his. But he is a great organizational thinker. He's a guy who started his own business. He got fired. He didn't have a job. He came up with a great idea, and he created a business that became one of the great American business success stories of all time. He is everything that Trump says he is as a businessman, Bloomberg really is. We know that Trump is great at being Trump. He's not a great businessman. He's had as many failures or more failures than he had wins. Bloomberg's had nothing but wins. He's built a dynasty. I mean, he revolutionized the information industry. And not only owned the hardware, he owned the software, he owned everything. He owned everything. He basically had the whole place and became one of the richest men in the world from nothing. No one gave him a head start. He had nothing. He got fired from his job in his 30s. I mean, the guy is an incredible American success story. And he's a very good leader. But he's not charismatic. And the question is, can he overcome that with his organization and his great wealth and the fact that he can put he can overwhelm everybody in every other way, operationally, in terms of commercials, in terms of brilliantly made commercials, in terms of volume of commercials. There's no way to touch anything he does in that regard. He could outspend everybody by such a wide margin because it's his own money. He's not beholden to anybody. He doesn't owe anybody a favor. He doesn't have to go ask for any checks. Every one of those guys is beholden to somebody. And they all talk about how they get grassroots money. They do. And some of them get a lot of grassroots money, like a Bernie Sanders. They're still beholden to somebody. Not him. Not Bloomberg. He's his own man because he has more money than all of them put together. Unless you bring in Warren Buffett and Gates in here, he's got more money than all of them. And Bezos, you want to put in that group now, too. He's moved up to that level. And soon, so will Musk if he keeps going with Tesla, although today wasn't a great day. But the last couple of days, Musk only made about, $10 or $12 billion. So, I mean, the way Tesla went crazy, if you've been watching. I'm sure you have. I'm sure you thought in the last couple of days, should I buy Tesla? Should I not buy Tesla? I'm sure every cocktail party in America or every dinner the last couple of days, should I buy Tesla? Should I not buy Tesla? Has anyone noticed that Tesla's gone up like 9,000% in the last? So if you're looking today, Tesla went down about 140 points. Don't quote me. I think it finished about down 150, 100 and finished down 152 points. Up a little bit after hours, but down 152 points for the day. That's a hurting day. If you just bought in and you went down 152 points, ouch. You don't want to be there. Now, you also didn't want to be somebody short in that stock the last couple of weeks, because if you did, your pockets are turning inside out now. Okay? That was not the stock to short. But I transgressed. But the point is, Bloomberg's a self-made gazillionaire, all right? He's got B with a capital B. He's got more money than he could count if he started counting, 10 years ago. He couldn't count it all. So no one with that kind of wealth has ever gotten into a race like this. So this is going to be fascinating to watch. You got guys coming out of nowhere. You got Bernie back for a second swing after he got screwed last time, and don't think he didn't get screwed. Okay, he got screwed last time. He did a lot better than anybody let on. The fix was in. But there's a big question whether this country would actually vote for someone who has views that Bernie has. He's got some really extreme, crazy views. And I think they're crazy. I would think most people do. And it would be fascinating to see if he could actually get a nomination. I'm not sure he could, but then who's that more middle-of-the-road guy in the Democratic Party if Biden is having to be propped up here? So fascinating to watch as we head to New Hampshire. Very much. That's like, that in a presidential year, watching this unfold, I think, is some of the most fascinating theater, even if you don't like politics. This is, and you should. You really should. At least on this level. And it is as fascinating as anything you can watch. More twists and turns than just about anything you can watch. And it doesn't pack you in some ways. So you should pay attention. I love it. I really do. So now we're on to New Hampshire after the Iowa thing was about as badly run as the Mets. Iowa was basically right out of the Met playbook. Name a manager, name another manager. Get an owner deal. Well, maybe we don't have an owner deal. We do have an owner deal. We don't have an owner deal. Is there a new owner? Is it not a new owner? Do we have another owner? Do we have another bid? Wait and see. Let's see where we go. All right, when we come back, we joined on
Sports Radio 66 WFAN.
All right, on this Wednesday evening, as always, we're brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. Casamigos, brought to you by those who drink it. And the fine folks at Casamigos bring you the program each night from 6 to 6:30. And baseball front and center here, and also the parade. So we got some stuff from Andy and Mahomes and all the guys. So obviously, this shift in power in the division and an ending of the Yankee-Red Sox rivalry, at least for the present time, really you knew was going to head in this direction. But before we get there and get to the Betts trade and the Paxton injury and what's going to happen with the Red Sox and what's going to happen with the Yankees and everything else, let's put a finishing touch on the victors and the Chiefs as they hold their parade, which is obviously what they do. And you know what? Andy Reid, who I've known for a long time, and I was very, very happy to see him win this game. I told you that all year that I was rooting openly for him. My son Harrison's a big Chief fan, so I took him to the game. I also took Julio to the game, who sat next to me, and he was, devastated as a big Niner fan, as you know. And Jack was kind of neutral, so he went with us too. So the four of us went. I was happy to see Andy win, and now it's a different, now he will be judged in a different light and treated a different way for his entire career. No more, he can't win the big one and everything. So Andy has dreamt about these days and about winning it, holding up that trophy, and then going to the parade. So here's Andy as he hits the podium today in Kansas City.
Kansas City, baby. We love you. How about a hand for these guys right here, huh? Hey, let's give them a little bit of that. How about the Chiefs on 3? 1.
5 seconds.
2, 3. How about those Chiefs?
He could do anything there, though. Even if it's bad, it doesn't matter. It's still good. All right, let's hear what he had to say about the fans.
Appreciate everything that you did for us. The support's been phenomenal. This parade
5
is second to none, man. It's the best in the NFL right here.
Now, you want to try and get off the podium without making any predictions. You can ask a lot of guys who've been up there and made a lot of goofy predictions. Let's listen.
One more thing is next year we're coming right back here.
5
more time, baby. One more time.
That's getting a little crazy. You want to stay away. It's a little easier said than done. We've had one team, the idea, and I saw Chiefs are overwhelming favorites. What? Do you know anything about this league? Overwhelming favorites. You know how hard it is to get back there? And look at what had a bounce right for the Chiefs. They're the first team in history to come from 10 back in each of their playoff wins. They had to have the Dolphins win against the Pats the last week of the regular season to get them a home game. They had to have Tennessee go in and shock the Ravens to get them the AFC title game at home. That all broke their way. They came from 24 back, 10 back, and 10 back. Not an easy thing to do, and every opponent will be ready for them. Every guy on the team who thought about winning a title, you know what he thinks about now? Getting a contract. Because it's one or the other. It's get a ring, then get rich. If you got rich first, then go get a ring. If you don't, if you got the contract, get a ring. If you got a ring, get the contract. No one thinks about, except maybe a Mahomes, because when the guy's a legacy guy, if he's a legendary guy, an iconic guy, he can think in bigger terms. But the other guys, now, they want their money. They got their ring. Here's Mahomes, who had a couple things to say.
When I became the starter for Kansas City, the first thing I wanted to do was bring the
5
Lamar Hunt trophy back to Kansas City, back to this organization.
All right, so he did that. He talks about Andy Reid.
Most important thing I wanted to do was get the Lombardi trophy for the greatest coach of all time. Andy
5
Reid, baby.
Now Andy's gone from being a guy who couldn't win a big one to the greatest coach in the world. I see. So now he's the greatest coach of all time. See, things change. One game changes your life. Have you ever seen it more magnified than with Andy Reid, who had 207 regular season wins already in the bank? 14 times he had led teams to 10 or more wins in a season. We already knew what kind of coach he was, but you need to have that big victory. And he finally got it. Here's a little more Mahomes.
This season, the adversity we deal with the injuries. I mean, my knee was in the side of my leg.
5
Still went back, and we won the Super Bowl. We the champs, baby.
Think about it. Remember when Mahomes got hurt that night? And everyone's like, oh, the season's over. He only missed 2 games. That's the amazing thing. And his legs did come back because his legs were a bigger factor than his arm in that game. We know how good his arm can be. But his legs were the biggest factor against an incredible incredible San Francisco pass rush. Now, you heard from Reed, you heard from Mahomes, which means you had to hear at least something from Kelsey.
About 21 years. Y'all know what that means? Everybody here is thinking, oh, that's when I can, legally get a drink. Yeah. No, 21 years. That's how long
5.
it's just been turning for my guy, Andy Reid.
Well, it took 21 years. No one had coached 20 years and then won a Super Bowl. 20 years is a long time to coach in this league. It really is. So this is about as popular win as I've seen. It was a fun game, and that puts the wrappings on this season for the Chiefs. Now it's about next year, and they will be, obviously, looking to see if they can do something very special. They have a good team. They have a wonderful quarterback. They got a Hall of Fame coach, which is nice now to say. Now, there's no question about that. But it will be very, very hard to get back there. It's not an easy thing to do. There'll be a whole lot of teams coming out of nowhere because one thing you know about the NFL is about a third of the teams to a half of the teams that didn't make the playoffs this year will be in the playoffs next year. It's that way every single year. Just making the playoffs back-to-back years in the NFL is hard. No less making it back to the Super Bowl back-to-back years or trying to win the Super Bowl back-to-back years. All right, when we come back, we will turn it to baseball, and obviously a lot going on. The Paxton injury, no surprise there. If you know this guy's history, are you surprised that he'd be injured? He's been injured every single year, almost of his entire career. I mean, you can start counting. You won't stop till you hit 9 or 10 by the time you get to his injuries. Betts to the Dodgers, which changes the balance of power with the Yankees and the Red Sox and changes it even more in the Dodgers' favor in the National League. What about the Red Sox? How many more moves are they going to make? What about the Yankees and their rotation? We'll get to all that right after. They got plenty of guys. So and you got the big four with Happ, Severino, Tanaka, and Cole. So it's not like you're going to have that big a problem filling the role in the regular season. Plus, you're going to win the regular season by a mile because the balance of power has shifted dramatically. And that's part of it. The Red Sox and Betts, this came to a head. The Red Sox were toying with this, and they've been one to tear it down and rebuild it, while the Yankees have been very reluctant to ever do this. I think part of it is being the Yankees. I think also part of it is being in a town where you share the team, where you share the city with another team. That affects you more. The Red Sox are by themselves there. Their people are still going to show up at Fenway Park no matter what. I mean, that's because it's just part of the experience of summer and spring to go there. If you're battling and you're not good and you're rebuilding and you break it down, you have another team in town, it changes things dramatically. New York's much more of a front-running town. It's not as traditional as Boston would be, let's say, with the Red Sox in the summer. They're going to still go to the games. The Red Sox clearly, when the Yankees got Cole, that did two things. It changed the balance of power even more. Plus, it opened up the contract problems with Betts, who wanted a contract Cole-like. Cole got $324 million. Betts wanted somewhere between $324 million and $400 million. And the Red Sox were like, no way. No, not a chance. So now you're sending the very talented Betts out of town. He goes to the Dodgers with Price. You unload the Price contract. They still would like to unload other contracts. They're going to unload other veteran guys on this team. You can see it coming. They might not be tomorrow. It might be a little later in the season, but you know it's going to happen. They're going to take a big step backwards. They're going to have to retool, obviously. Jackie Bradley's going to go. Valdi could go. I mean, we could go down. Workman could go. We got a lot of guys who could go. You got guys in the lineup that could go. So they're going to rebuild, and they'll rebuild quicker than you think. You know that. And now they made the Dodgers stronger because the Dodgers, who got more athletic, got better defensively, now have a better balance in their lineup because, and you'll see the Dodgers go to more of this everyday lineup now have a big righty bat and a great all-around player to put into their lineup, and they're loaded. They didn't give up a lot. They didn't give up a lot in the three-way deal for them. They get Price also in the mix, so the Dodgers wind up in a very, very strong position. And the question now is, who challenges the Dodgers in the National League? What is the role of the Astros in the long term challenging the Yankees in the American League? Otherwise, the Yankees have a huge advantage, just like the Dodgers do in the National League. And then the only team is the Astros are capable, but they're not going to be as good. But they're still could be really good. We'll see if somebody else emerges. But obviously, there's a void where these two teams now are clearly the teams to beat in both leagues. There's no question about that. And the Yankees are in a very, very dominant position versus their rivals because the Red Sox are going to take an enormous step backwards here and go into the throes of a serious rebuilding process. Now, Hal spoke about the whole thing with the Astros, and you're going to hear a lot about that all spring. You're going to hear about it whenever the Astros are in town. You're going to hear about it until the Astros go through a litany of apologies as this all unfolds. There's a couple of things. Number one, I thought some of what he said was good. I thought the idea of moving on, which is what he said, me standing here on February 5th, I'm moving forward, looking forward to the 2020 season. That's my focus now. That's a good point. That's the way to handle it. The whole idea of going back and dwelling on 2017 and what it meant, you know what? Didn't mean anything because you can't predict to me. I don't care. And this is for CC Sabathia. I'm glad it's such a given that they would have won the World Series. Why is it a given? And Yankees don't whine for World Series. You know what? Go out and win World Series. The Yankees are sure good enough to go out and win World Series. So I understand the Yankees and all these other teams feel like this team had an advantage. Okay. We can all dispute how big the advantage was. I don't know that we can tangibly, and baseball said they wanted to stay away from trying to put that in any kind of relationship where they tried to explain what kind of advantage they had, because it's a very difficult thing to do. Number two, because I see guys now evaluating at bat, saying, guys who want to make it not a big deal, say, look, this at bat proves, look, this guy had no advantage here. They look how fooled he is on this. But again, none of it proves anything. They cheated. We know that. If they cheated, though, and you heard rumblings and the Yankees were suspicious or had an issue in 17, which we hear that they did, then why did they bring Beltran on to 18 with them? Why would they hire someone from that franchise? That's something you have to answer to. I haven't heard them address that. Why would that be the case? If you had question marks about it, well, A, why did you bring Beltran into your organization? And B, did you question Beltran about it? And if you did, what did he say? So you're opening up something you might not want to talk about by going to that route. So, for everybody involved with baseball, the best thing is to get this behind them, but I think it's going to be a very hard thing for them to do. But to have it be that, you're going to go back and think you're going to change history, I mean, come on. That doesn't work. Because there's been plenty of times where the Yankees have been cast into, doubt and into having to answer for different things, including having as many or more players who were caught doing steroids as anybody else. So why go back and rehash this stuff? Either win on the field or you lose on the field. Case closed. Nobody's going to hand you a trophy that you didn't earn. Nobody's going to give you a trophy that you did not earn. So stop whining for one. And you can't declare yourself that. I'm sure the Dodgers would, I'm sure they would readily agree that you would have beat them, right? Why? Why would they? There's not a lot of difference between the teams. Why would they? So sorry it didn't win. Sorry that this happened, obviously. But does it mean that you are, vindicated and now it's your title? Sorry, it doesn't work that way. Nor should it. Some things have to be earned on the field. There's no other way to earn them. So it's just silly. And to get the politicians involved, politicians often look dumb on a clear day. To get them involved in sports where they're going to mandate stuff or have stuff overturned, be quiet. All you're trying to do is make a publicity stunt into something where you can get a couple of days exposure out of, which we all know is your motivation. So just don't even bother us with the nonsense, because it is nonsense. And it means very little. And again, nobody knows what team has been doing what, because there have been rumors rampant that there are more than a couple of teams involved. Now, I don't know what teams that would be. I have no idea. Nor do I expect anyone to know or anyone to find out. But there have sure been enough rumors about that stuff. And baseball's going to have to put a lid on their technology. That's all. If they're going to utilize technology and make it open in areas during the game, then they're going to have a problem. There's no question about it. Because you got every game televised, and the center field cameras become a very popular feature. And if you're going to have that, it's going to cause issues. If it's going to be transmitted into places where the players are, you're going to cause issues. If you're going to allow them to have electronics in the dugout, it's going to cause issues. So all of that has to be dealt with. So the best way to do it would just be shut it all down. Nothing wrong with that. Do you have to have it during the game? No, you don't. Just take the best way to do that would be take the video out of the manager's hands. Just have the umpires review plays that they feel they need to review. That's all. Have another umpire set up for each game where they send down a message, we're going to check this play. That's all. We're not sure you got it right. We're going to check this play and take the manager out of it, which means the manager wouldn't have any reason to have video. You didn't have to have a guy as a video coordinator. You don't have such a reliance on video from a standpoint of the teams during the game, and you can shut down the video for the teams during the game. Just take the team out of the video process and out of the review process. Just set it up where you review yourself, which is what you get in college football. You have a video coordinator who is there and polices the plays that need to be policed. That's all. Hey, I have an issue. I want to see this again. I want to make sure you guys got this right. It's fairer. There's no bias there. You don't have to worry about what the teams are dabbling in during the game. And it keeps the integrity level up because your teams don't have a hand on this stuff. So that might be the most... No one's going to take, in this day and age, where the viewing of the game at home is enhanced on such a level, and it's going to continue to be more enhanced, to where you're going to be able soon to cut cameras yourself, which means you're going to be able to get more than one look than just the TV look. You're going to be able to look at it from different angles. If you choose different angles yourself, if you want to have that kind of technology, you're going to have it. So you're going to be able to look at different angles than the ones that are given to you even on your live game, if you care to do so. I mean, this is only going to be for the diehard fan, but when you have that kind of enhanced video quality at home, then you have to get the plays right. Because what they don't want is they don't want everybody sitting at home stewing over a play being wrong that everyone was aware was wrong, but you using only human judgment got it very wrong. And we all know in games there are some blatant calls that they get wrong that are really like, I mean, we've seen some plays, especially in baseball, first base stuff where you're saying, are you guys even watching? I mean, in football, there's some plays that are just very tough to officiate. I mean, pass interference both ways. And this year they brought offensive pass interference into the mix, as you saw with the Kittle play in the Super Bowl. Offensive pass interference can be a very, very tough play to call and a very tough play to officiate in a big game. Because you're talking about not only contact, I'll take the contact, but I can't have extension. What level of extension? What level of push? So it's a very, very tricky thing. There's a nuance to it that makes it so hard to officiate. I mean, that play seemed to get more attention than just about any other. And it was the idea that maybe there was a hold on Bosa on the 3rd and 15 play, which the Niners, in talking about the play, never brought up. Their fans have brought it up out there. But the Niners, in reviewing the game, talking specifically about how they almost have Mahomes, not one time brought up, at least where I saw, not one time did they bring up the idea they were held on the play. Which a lot of fans, I know, thought that they were. But listen, we know you can call holding on a lot of plays. And one thing I'd say about this past game from an officiating standpoint, I thought the game was pretty reasonably officiated. And what I liked about it was they didn't call every ticky-tack. There were only 9 fouls called the entire game. Maybe they let something go a little bit. Maybe a little holding go. You know what? It makes for a better game if that's the case. You don't want something blatant where it's a blatant takedown, okay, that leads to a big play. I understand that. If it's blatant, anything that's blatant it needs to be called. But when you can get through a game like that and only have 9 accepted penalties, and a couple of big ones, the Kittle play there, obviously the Kelsey pass interference, which I thought was a real call. Those plays were big calls. But it was a game where the officials did not play that big a role in it, which was nice for a change. And I think that's usually the case in the Super Bowl more than anything else. Flags are usually down in the Super Bowl. All right, we're good. See you tomorrow. We'll have a lot of the stuff. It's been a busy week. It really has. The show, as always, brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. Casamigos, brought to you by those who drink it. We'll see you tomorrow.